Our focus for this has been on childhood and the life of a Sioux County kid. When we were at the museum, we chose 5 different topics to focus on. Our first focus is on the clothing of Sioux County and Iowa children. This article of clothing I'm showing you first shows what was worn by Native Americans in the early time period before the Dutch settlers came. It shows that children in the Native American culture were to dress like adults below and would someday earn their headgear up top. As history moved to the time of the Dutch settlement, we see a change in clothing as the Dutch Netherlanders brought over their traditional clothing, which you often see at Dutch festivals like the Tulip Festival here in Orange City. To take care of their clothing, children learned from their mothers how to wash and iron their clothes like you see in the picture here. This was to keep them nice as long as possible because back then you couldn't make clothing the way you do now. Next we are going to focus on the topic of Sinterklaas, which is a traditional folk story that young children loved back in this time.
For most children in the Netherlands, December 5 is the most important day because Sinterklaas, or Saint Nicholas, brings them presents. The name Santa Claus comes from Sinterklaas. On the morning of St. Nicholas' Day, Sinterklaas comes to a town or city dressed in his red bishop's robes. He travels with his servants, called Zwarte Pieten, or Black Peters. When Sinterklaas arrives, people ring bells in celebration while he rides on a white horse through town. Children even leave wooden shoes out and sing Sinterklaas songs in hope of getting presents overnight. They leave hay and carrots in the shoes for the horse, hoping they may get some sweets in return. During the night, it is believed that Sinterklaas and Zwarte Piet ride on a horse, landing on roofs for Sinterklaas to go down the chimney to give gifts. This is very similar to the Santa Claus that we know today.
Many of the children's toys were able to be preserved, mostly because they were made from wood, leather, or sewn together from cloth. Some of the most common toys played among Dutch children were board games, wooden bats and swords, spinning tops, rattles, and dolls. Another popular pastime of children was ice skating. Around the 14th century, the Dutch started using wooden platform skates with a flat iron bottom. These skates were attached to the skater's shoes with leather straps. Poles were used to propel the skater. Around the 1500s, the Dutch added a narrow, metal, double-edged blade, making the poles unnecessary because they could glide and push themselves with their feet.
Reading is an important part of childhood, as it is the foundation to a bright and fruitful future. Children in the Netherlands begin to learn how to read at age 5, just like children in America. Children learn how to read at school and take that knowledge home to read with their parents. One of the famous children's books from the 1920s is Hans and Hilda of Holland by Laura R. Smith. Tulips are a huge part of the Dutch culture, so obviously there are children's books about tulips. 2 examples of this is Tulip Time by Dirk Griggenhaus and The Little Dutch Tulip Girl by Madeline Branderis. Incorporating the Dutch culture into children's books is a way of teaching the children about the history of their own culture.
School during the 1900s was quite a bit different than it is today in Iowa. Classes were typically large, and boys and girls were sometimes taught separately, though this was not always possible in smaller country schoolhouses. In small schoolhouses, entire families of children might all be in the same room, all at different grade levels and stages of learning, and the teacher was responsible for teaching all of them at once. In rural communities, children walked a mile or more from their homes each day, and some rode ponies. Schoolhouses were prized buildings in their communities and often acted as the center of activities, meetings, dances, and social events. They varied in size from one room to several rooms. Strict clothing rules were in place in the 1900s for children attending school. Girls commonly wore long skirts and blouses, while boys were most likely found wearing suits with ties.
As you can see, the life of a Sioux County kid back in the day is a lot different than it is now. Thank you for watching, and we hope this could be educational for you.